So we're going to call the meeting to order. First order of business is an anticipated executive session, and there is a proposed motion. Chair would entertain that motion.
I'll move to find that premature public knowledge regarding confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services and labor relations agreements with employees would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage, and further move that we enter executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services and labor relations agreements with employees under Title I, Sections 313A1B and F of the Vermont statutes, and to discuss a possible real estate transaction under Title I, Section 313A2, and invite Town Attorney Bariah Smith and Senior Planner Emily Heyman to join the legal services discussion, Police Chief Foley and Lieutenant Eric Shepard to join the discussion for labor relations agreement, and Town Manager Eric Wells to join all discussions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
What she said.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. It is unanimous. We are in executive session. So we are back in regular session. Executive session ended at 7:26. No formal motions were made, but I think
We do have one.
We'll need to
we
consider one.
have to consider one now,
Yeah.
but it was not made in executive session.
That would be illegal.
Yes, because it would be illegal, and we don't do that here. So that being said, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the settlement agreement signed by Matthew Parisi and Blair Knowles and authorize the town manager to sign it on the town's behalf when the village zoning bylaws take effect.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The ayes have it. Okay. Next on the agenda, the minutes from April 1st. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve, subject to modification.
Is there a second?
I'll second. You gotta be faster, Ellie.
Actually, the chair recognizes Ellie made that second. Okay, so let's go through it. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Hearing no modifications, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The ayes have it. Next, public comment. This would be a moment for anybody present or anybody participating online to make a public comment. It can be about something that's on the agenda, but it does not have to be. Is there anybody here who wishes to make a public comment? Seeing no one. Eric, is there anybody online?
Nope, no one on.
Okay. Great. So next, the liquor license application. Eric, can you do a
Yeah, we have
intro?
2 applications. One is joining us online. Ben is joining us from Hometown Comics and Coffee. And then we have Old Town Cafe and Comics, sorry, I got the name wrong. And then El Comal is in person. Santos is here. So to the chair, do you want to go to Zoom first or in the room
Let's
first?
do the people in the room first. So,
So this is a first and third class liquor license application for El Comal in Taft Corners Shopping Center, first and third class. It's a new license application, so the applicant's here before the board. Staff has no objections to the application, and the owners are here if the board has questions for them.
okay. Any questions for Eric or I'm sorry, is Mr. Santos, is that? Yes. Just come on up, just to, if for no other reason, just to say hello. So, Hi, so does anybody have any questions for Mr. Santos?
Where are you located?
Right by the 99 restaurant.
99, okay. I always like to try new places.
Okay.
Is I know state has training and everything, but as far as managing the liquor license, do you have experience or do you have a staff who has experience?
Yeah, so Casimiro is my business partner. He used to own Paisano's Pizzeria.
Oh.
Where he used to sell wine, beers, and that's what we want to sell here as well, including mezcal, tequila, so for people to enjoy.
And currently you have only indoor seating. Are you planning to have outdoor
No,
seating
at
or
the
not?
moment,
Okay,
just indoor.
okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions? Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we want to propose we
One
make
at
a
a
motion?
time, yeah.
Let's do them one at a time.
I'll move to approve a first and third class liquor license to El Comal Mexican Cuisine.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. The motion carries. So,
Thank you.
congratulations. Thank you, sir.
We'll get this process, and the state of Vermont will follow up.
Okay, thanks.
So, and next, it's Old Town Cafe and Comics. Is it Mr. Perry?
Yep, we're getting him connected on Zoom right now. So this is a first-class license. I chatted with Ben this afternoon as well, and they're located in Cottonwood Crossing. So I think, Ben, when you're connected, you can just unmute and share your camera if you'd like as well.
There we go.
There we go. So you're on with the select board.
Hi.
So, Ben, could you just give a brief introduction and talk about your business and what the license, the idea behind the liquor license at a place like this?
Yeah, so it's a comic book shop and gaming store that also has a cafe. I think some of you are familiar with it. And the idea behind the liquor license, we're just looking to serve beer, and the idea behind it is we have a lot of people who come in and hang out and play games like Magic the Gathering or tabletop games, and to just be able to serve a beer or two, when they come in and hang out.
Okay.
But no tequila.
Any questions?
What kind of food are you going to be serving?
Pardon me?
You said, it says, Old Town Cafe. What kind of food is it that you will be serving?
So right now we're just doing breakfast foods, but obviously if the liquor license is approved, we're going to be extending that to basic lunch and evening offerings. And we'll probably keep it relatively simple, but sandwiches and other things like hot dogs and burgers.
Thank you.
It's 2 nights out for you now, Mike.
I don't consider this a conflict of interest, but I frequent the shop, and in fact, I have an account there, which I was hesitant to do because for some reason, I don't go to Star Trek conventions. I think it's a trick to get us all into one place, keep track of us. But anyway, if anyone thinks that's a conflict, let me know, but otherwise, I think we're ready for the motion. Okay, so is there a motion?
I move to approve a first-class liquor license to the Old Town Cafe and Comics.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. The motion carries. Okay. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So the interview and appointment is taken off the agenda for tonight, so that brings us to Maple Tree Place Music Series temporary event permit.
Yep, I think Justin's here. Is Justin Kelly here? Oh, thought he might be attending, but,
He did such a good job last year that
Yeah.
felt he didn't need to.
yeah, the board has this application, this music series again at Maple Tree Place. It was revamped last year. Staff had no issues. I think we had good community turnout at the event. Staff prepared the temporary event permit with some staff comments and conditions. I know the applicant's aware of those. I think it's essentially the same as last year. We're recommending approval.
Yeah. Any questions for Eric?
Same hours as last year? What are the hours?
Good question.
I think they
I think it's in
ended.
the application.
Yeah, it says.
Yeah.
6 to 8:45.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, it's a, you know, become a tradition or that was reinstated last year. You know, fully support getting people together in our community this way.
I think it's a good idea.
No issues last year, Eric?
No, I didn't hear anything. I think it was well-attended and, yeah, well-run, organized event. Seriously.
I read somewhere, like, if you have 1,000 people, you'll need a different permit. 1,000 people, holy smokes.
Yeah.
You know where to park everybody.
Any further questions for Eric? If not, a motion would be in order.
I move to approve a temporary event permit for the 2025 Maple Tree Place Music Series.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, the motion carries. So that would therefore bring us up to the next item, Marshall Avenue, South Brownell intersection alternatives.
Yeah, so we have some staff and consultants here. You might recognize them from a couple months ago when this was introduced to the board. This is the next step in the process for this study. They're going to go over some possible alternatives for consideration. The select board is asked to select a preferred alternative for the project. You can do so at this meeting, but you don't have to. You could, if you had additional questions, you could continue this discussion at a future meeting. So we have consultants from Stantec, Public Works Director Bruce Hoare is also here. I'll put their slides on the screen if I have a presentation prepared, so I'll turn it over to Sean and team.
Thank you, Eric.
Just
To
gonna share this.
all select board members and for public attendance. Yeah, we look forward to reviewing with you alternatives that we have prepared for improvements at the intersection of Marshall Avenue and South Brownell Road. And so tonight we'll talk a little bit about project background, review the alternative solutions, open it up for, thank you, open it up for any feedback or questions, and then talk about next steps of the project.
So the project is located along the corridor of Marshall Ave at South Brownell Road. Just to give a bit of context to the area, the land use is characterized as mostly commercial and industrial land use. This intersection along Marshall Ave also leads to the retail center of Williston. At this intersection, there's a significant amount of traffic, and with recent development to the west of the intersection, this is increased even more so. There's also a significant amount of truck traffic at this intersection, which is consistent with the area's industrial land use.
So here we have what we refer to as the purpose and needs statement. This is developed for all scoping studies. It helps to encapsulate, why it is we're doing this study and what we hope to get out of it. It's used to help guide the development of alternatives, as well as to compare the alternatives in terms of how well they meet the purpose and needs. So the purpose of this project is to develop concepts to improve intersection safety and operations to meet the needs of all transportation users traveling through this intersection. Recognizing the importance of this intersection in the transportation system for the town, the following needs have been identified. There is a need to upgrade the traffic signal system. There is a need to improve pedestrian facilities. There is a need to update lane configuration. And there is a need to improve drainage and stormwater management.
So this is the first alternative, the no-build alternative. So looking at baseline conditions at the intersection. So if no improvements or changes were made to the intersection. And while this alternative is likely not to be chosen, we maintain it throughout the scoping process as a comparison, to use it as a comparison with other alternatives.
So just to clarify, no build is also, it's just the do nothing?
Correct.
Okay, so it wouldn't even be, so have we decided there's nothing you can do with just changing the signal lights or anything? It's that outside your scope because you're talking construction?
So this no-build alternative would mean no improvements are made
At all.
whatsoever. And the following alternatives will describe the improvements.
Is this all town-owned roads,
These are town-owned roads.
town roads? I compliment the town on being proactive on doing things like this. I think it's, wish the state was as quick acting.
We're quick studying, not quick acting.
So this is the second alternative, the traffic signal system replacement as the current traffic signal reaches the end of its service life, as well as a full-depth reconstruction of the intersection, including an updated lane configuration, so a dedicated right turn lane added to the eastbound approach, and a dedicated left turn lane added to the northbound and westbound approach. Along with the updated lane configuration, there would be an update to corner geometry with directional pedestrian ramps, so detectable warning surfaces would line up with the crosswalks. Also, at each of the corners is a truck apron. They would be added to each of the corners in order to accommodate large trucks making turns at this intersection. In terms of drainage improvements, we would take a look at the existing culvert on the eastbound approach, which was replaced recently as a temporary solution. It would be fully replaced in this alternative, as well as doing a full analysis and design of drainage improvements in the area. And lastly, we would take a look at lighting improvements. We would do lighting analysis and design at this intersection to ensure that the street lighting would fit with current lighting standards. And our final alternative is the roundabout alternative, which would involve adding roundabout warning signs at each approach prior to the roundabout. This would also take a look at lighting and drainage improvements similar to the previous alternative. Crosswalks would be added to two of the approaches, pushed back from the roundabout, with rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs, which you may be familiar with at nearby mid-block crossings or other local roundabouts. This is where the pedestrian is able to press a button on the RRFB sign, and the sign would flash in order to warn oncoming traffic that a pedestrian is crossing at this crosswalk. We would also take a look at realigning the shared use paths in order to fit the roundabout configuration. This alternative would increase safety at this intersection by forcing oncoming vehicles to slow down as they approach the intersection and travel at a constant speed. The implementation of splitter islands would also lead to an increase in safety at the intersection by again forcing vehicles to slow down as they approach the roundabout. They would also act as a pedestrian refuge island for those pedestrians that are crossing at the crosswalks. And again, we have the use of truck aprons at two of the corners, as well as on the central island for larger trucks that are looking to make turns at this roundabout to ensure that they have enough space to do so. So overall, this alternative would be able to accommodate larger trucks that are making these turning movements, heavier trucks.
The truck apron versus corner geometry.
They go hand in hand. So the corner geometry is about the radius, the curve of the corner itself, as well as bumping out that the pavement. And then the truck apron comes on top of that in areas where it's been identified that a truck could use a little bit more room than the general traveling public to make their turns. And the truck aprons are more reinforced. They're concrete with reinforced steel, and so they're very durable, and they can handle trucks. They're mountable, so trucks can drive over them, while passenger vehicles would be uncomfortable if they were to drive over them.
Okay, thanks.
Would this traffic circle be roundabout? Would it be, how would it be in comparison to the one between the currently and between Dick's and Best Buy?
It would be larger.
Would it be larger?
Yeah, it would be larger to accommodate more traffic, as well as heavy volumes of large trucks. And it would also have, in addition to the truck aprons on the corners, there's a large truck apron around the central island. And so that also helps to accommodate large trucks coming through the area, while keeping passenger vehicles within the general travel lane.
Would it be similar to size to the ones in Waterbury?
It would be more similar to the size of the one in Waterbury, yes, that's correct.
Can't kid me. The reason there's an apron on the middle part is because cars don't know they're in a roundabout until they get there. It's too late.
Yeah, so part of the design of a roundabout is that it actually forces motorists to slow down, by deflecting them, making them turn, and then helping to reinforce a constant speed throughout the roundabout, so it calms the traffic that way.
Yeah, I love the roundabouts myself. I don't know why we don't have one in North Williston, The end of North Williston Road. It's sad somebody's gonna have to get killed there to make a difference, That's a dangerous intersection. That's real dangerous.
They do generally have a very substantial impact on reducing the number and severity of motor vehicle crashes in comparison to a typical four-way signalized intersection. And so that's one of the reasons why the state, when the state is looking at improvements to intersections, they have a mandate that they need to at least consider roundabouts. And we're seeing them more and more, and the more that they are used, the more that people are get comfortable with them. The Waterbury roundabout, for example, during planning and design, there was a lot of concern raised and a lot of pushback, but then after implementation, people using, motorists using those roundabouts, including a lot of heavy trucks, associated with coffee roasters and other businesses, they became much more comfortable with it, and now, it's become kind of a big hit down there.
Change is hard sometimes.
It is, yeah.
I think this is a good change.
So this slide here shows some baseline traffic analysis for the existing conditions, as well as the no-build alternative 5 years and 10 years out into the future. And while traffic operations in general were not a large driver of this study, this is helpful to see it as a baseline and to look at, are there any impacts to traffic from any of the alternatives, for consideration. One item that has been observed, as well as shown in our analysis, is the formation of queue lengths develop at certain times. And so if no improvements are made, then those queues will continue to grow, during the heaviest times of travel. And so moving towards to the next slide, here we compare the traffic analysis for the two alternatives. So the two portions at the top are looking at the signal alternative, 5 years and 10 years out into the future, and the portions at the bottom are looking at the roundabout alternative, 5 years and 10 years into the future. Looking at these results, both both alternatives, work pretty well in terms of traffic operations. They would both be acceptable. Comparing the roundabout to the signal, actually the roundabout would provide higher levels of service with substantially lower delay and lower queues. Roundabout would help traffic to continue to keep moving. And so you wouldn't get those same queues that you do have now. And so that's, one component of the evaluation. I think we can move to the next one.
So considering the fact that there is a significant amount of traffic at this intersection, the intersection was designed for a WB67, which was one of the largest commonly used trucks. So this is part of the design process where we take a look at truck turning movements at each of the approaches to ensure that the trucks are able to make all necessary turns without encroaching on opposing lanes. Based on these truck turning templates, which are rather conservative, we added those truck aprons to each of the corners to give the trucks even more space while they're making their turning movements.
How do you come up with the green lines?
What was that?
How do you come up with the green lines? Is it a model or is it a?
It's a program
Yeah.
that we use to,
This
yeah,
is a really
model.
tired truck driver, and this is a fresh one, and this is a really big truck.
And the big one is me.
So we did a similar truck turning analysis for the roundabout alternative to ensure that the roundabout was wide enough to accommodate these larger trucks that are making these turns. This alternative, similar to the previous one, also includes these mountable truck aprons. On this alternative, it's on 2 of the corners as well as the center island. So these truck aprons, again, are mountable, so the truck drivers are able to drive up onto them, but they'd be less comfortable for, say, a passenger vehicle to drive on them. And so they are made of concrete and steel, so structurally they would be able to support these heavier trucks that are making turns at this intersection.
And so here we have an evaluation matrix which compares the alternatives, including the no-bill alternative, based on several different criteria. At the top, we look at construction costs and total project costs, and then we look at how well they meet the purpose and need, and then we look at some additional impacts. So in terms of costs, the signal is coming out more expensive, more costly, and the reason for that is because of the not only is the signal being replaced, but also the full depth reconstruction. And in the full depth reconstruction, is an improvement that's recommended based on the impacts that the heavy truck traffic have on the intersection currently. And so, looking at the intersection, the pavement, you can see a fair amount of impacts, rutting and whatnot, due to the heavy truck traffic. And so, so the signal is showing as a little bit more expensive, from that perspective. Looking at the purpose and need, both alternatives do meet the purpose and need. For updating the traffic signal system, of course, the roundabout is basically providing an alternate solution, an alternate method of traffic control, and so it takes the place of a traffic signal system. And likewise, for updating lane configuration, which is appropriate with the signal, the roundabout would function very well without added lanes, and so it is also an alternative solution to updating lane configuration. But they would both improve pedestrian facilities in terms of the ramps, for the crosswalks. The signal would upgrade the pedestrian signal control features, bringing them up to current standards, making them a little bit closer to the crosswalks, and adding, you know, auditory signals for folks, you know, that have visual impairments. And the roundabout, of course, you know, has the crosswalks with the refuge islands and the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. Both alternatives would improve drainage and stormwater management. In terms of other impacts, you know, traffic operations, the signal would improve traffic operations compared to the no-build alternative, and the roundabout would improve them even more so than the signal would. In terms of safety, they would both improve safety for all modes. You know, roundabouts are generally seen as even safer, you know, due to some of the things that we talked about, the forcing of slower speeds. Right of way, the roundabout does have substantially greater impacts in terms of right of way on the 4 parcels adjacent to the intersection, as shown here. And those right of way costs are also added to the total project costs, based on available, you know, existing information. Looking at environmental impacts in terms of wetlands or threatened endangered species, neither of the alternatives are expected to have those impacts. Likewise with cultural resources in terms of archaeological impacts due to the previous development in the area and at the intersection, there are no expected impacts to cultural resources. Both alternatives would require coordination with utility owners and possibly some relocation of utility poles. And for stormwater and drainage, both alternatives would have substantial improvements at the intersection. Here we you know, kind of did an exercise where we looked at different scenarios of what the project costs might increase to be over 5 or 10 years. Of course, there's uncertainty, and so we looked at a range. You know, we talked with some of our staff who deal a lot with construction costs and you know, really are looking at changes you know, over the last few years and currently ongoing. And so we looked at a range of a 2% increase per year to a 5% increase per year, and here we're showing a 3% increase per year, which seemed likely based on available information. And so, you know, with that, 5 years from now, those construction costs, you know, would increase as shown here, and then they would, you know, obviously continue to increase, you know, 10 years out, just to kind of show some planning scenarios. And then moving on.
So this is just a timeline of what we've done so far in the scoping process and where we are headed. So back in January, we had the public input meeting. After gathering input, we were able to develop and finalize our purpose and needs statement and develop and evaluate our alternatives. And then after gathering input this evening and also from our project team, we will be able to recommend a preferred alternative to the town for endorsement. And we'll be able to take that and eventually finalize our report and use that report to pursue funding for eventual design and construction.
How was the public input? How was that met? You know, how did the public receive it?
At that meeting, there was not much in terms of public input, but we received a lot of helpful input from the select board members.
You have two people here tonight that are property owners on forms.
And so if there is any input or questions, you know, we would welcome that.
Bruce, in terms of these alternatives, since these roads will have to be plowed, would like the shift to a rotary, what impact would that have on plowing? And would we need additional equipment? Would it be additional cost or time?
So I don't mean to be trying to correct people, but I want to make sure we call this the right thing. It's not a rotary and it's not a traffic circle. They're roundabouts.
Roundabout, okay,
Okay?
sorry.
And I only say that because
Yeah.
there are differences
Yep.
that people get. So it's like I say every time it comes up for plowing. You know, like everybody else, we'd like roads to be nice and straight, not have to turn and everything else. But we'll figure it out. I don't think it's any more cost. Actually, I think it'd probably be cheaper. It's less lanes, and they're going around in a circle. So since we don't really have any, I don't consider the one in Maple Tree Place a roundabout either. But anyway, we don't have any problem plowing that. So I don't see that as a problem. The one thing that wasn't pointed out is the cost of a roundabout overall may be more expensive, but then there's no cost for taking care of those signals and all those extra lanes and the painting and everything as time goes on.
Actually, it was less expensive.
Yeah.
It was less
Yeah,
expensive.
it's less expensive.
Because of signal, I assume, and lanes.
But that cost doesn't include the easements that we might
Right.
need, right?
Right.
Well, the total project costs include construction costs, engineering, design, municipal project management, construction engineering, as well as right-of-way impacts. And so, you know, those are based on current information, you know, parcel values that are publicly available, you know, applying those to the, you know, what we've measured for those impacts. And so those were included in those.
I just want to double check, because it says plus ROW.
Oh, yes, so I apologize for that. So we did some updates since we submitted that previously to the Select Board. And so and we can share that again, but the slides that were on the screen this evening, those numbers have been updated with those with those right-of-way impact costs. Thank you, yeah.
Well, that's good, because it's a pretty big engineering $1 million on top of the project if it didn't include the right-of-way, so.
A little shorter here. My name is Jason Adams from Adams Properties. I own the property on the, well, the daycare property there.
Southwest?
Yeah, Southwest, thank you for doing that. I actually came here thinking the roundabout was gonna be a way better alternative, but significantly more expensive, so I was pleasantly surprised to see those numbers. I think as long as that factors in large truck traffic, which it obviously does, I think that would be a way better model. I work on Boyer Circle. I drive through this intersection multiple times a day. And like I said, I think the roundabout would be better. I did have a little, I had a couple comments on the alternative, I think alternative 2 now, where it was re-signaling. Coming from basically, from Boyer Circle, so you're heading east on Marshall, you have a straight and a left turn lane and a right turn lane. I think adding the 2 lanes would be a real nice improvement to this intersection, because it does back up past the FedEx entrance pretty regularly in the evenings or afternoons and evenings.
Wow.
However, I think having a straight and a left turn lane, I think you need a left turn only lane there and a straight and a right. Typically what I do on this intersection, if I'm the first in the line, you have to watch cross traffic. You see the light turning red. If no one's coming, you start going so you can get out before that first car, or else that traffic is gonna stay backed up the entire time. So without knowing any of the engineering behind it, obviously, in my observations, I think a left only and a straight right turn lane would be better. I also think you're gonna see what you see further down Marshall Ave at the next intersection at Williston Road, where people are going into the right lane to go straight because they don't want to wait for the left turners. And then the people turning left the other way now have a straight car coming from the right lane. I see that all the time further down the road, and I can see it happening here too. Other than that, like I said, I think the rotary looks like a really nice option. This is a really busy intersection, and it gets really backed up, and it's pretty unsafe with the signaling right now. Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful, and I'll mention, just in terms of the lane configuration, so, we did make those configurations based on the traffic analysis, which would be further, looked at again during design, but it was based on, the turning movement volumes that were measured, during our data collection phase. But your input is helpful, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
If I may. Ryan Carroll, I represent Wood and Palmer, the unit across the street from Mr. Adams. Oh, just, thank you. One of the concerns, I emailed this to Bruce, one of the concerns we have, we're obviously in the heavy equipment business, and in that area, you are in the industrial center of Chittenden County, and quite frankly, the state. Just to give you an idea, in the immediate vicinity there, you have 2 heavy equipment dealers, you have 2 crane operators, and you have, I would say, about half a dozen civil contractors all operating large, oversized, wide load vehicles. The concern we have with the roundabout is the ability of those to navigate it effectively. I have no doubt that the 53-foot trailers, your average everyday dry-van trailer, was considered in the study. And obviously, you've got the data to show that, and that I assume is the WB67, your 67-foot wheelbase. Where our concern is the ability of those wider loads to be able to navigate that roundabout. That is not traffic that has a way to be rerouted. That's either their origin or their destination. They have to go through that intersection. So I would just want to make sure that we give the input that if there is truly going to be a roundabout there, that it is designed to accommodate that traffic that is going to flow through there. And if it can't be designed to accommodate that, I would hope to urge the pursuing of the second option, where there are turning lanes and it's no constricted flow into the intersection. So,
How do you define the kind of truck that you're worried about?
Generally low boys, so they are split deck for carrying oversized loads, excavators, rough terrain cranes, anything that overhangs the wheelbase of your standard trailer width that's lane legal. So they obviously are permanent loads. They have to be flagged, but almost anything that transports in and out of our yard or many of the businesses around us operate low boys, and we'll have a hard time getting through a roundabout.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. And I would ask if you can send some, specific models or some specific examples. We can do some additional analysis and some refining of that alternative to take that into consideration to see if they can be refined to accommodate them sufficiently, and that would be really helpful.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of hinted at this, but I just want to echo, I agree. If this is not designed for like the largest trucks, it is going to be a mess.
Right.
So, yeah, I completely agree with that.
Any right-hand turn with a big truck is difficult.
Yeah. You'll see those aprons exist.
6 feet to it makes it hard.
I don't know if this makes sense or not, but the ladder truck that we have for the fire department, it'd be cool if that could get through it too.
Most definitely. Yeah, that will definitely be able to get through with it. Be able to get through it.
Okay. All right. So you're looking for input from us tonight?
Well, if you have any input from tonight that you would like to share, then we would be happy to receive it. Otherwise, we will take the input that we've received, take the questions that were asked, and we will revisit it with the project team. We will look at the alternatives again and see if there are any refinements to be made. In particular, we'll take a look at the oversized trucks and see if that calls for some refinement of the roundabout alternative. So if there is any other input that you have tonight, we're happy to receive it. Otherwise, we, will have an additional update for you later on.
Okay. Any further input?
Additional input from the Public Works Director?
I'll be part of the team looking at it. Not right now, I would say, I mean, there was sent something to Eric, I said you guys could certainly make a choice tonight, but now I would say, based on this other information, that we go back and look and see what the turning radiuses are going to be for a roundabout at this location before an alternative will come back. We'll only come back one more time.
Well, I think that, my other concern is that everybody I know hates roundabouts, and so this could be my last election that I ever win. More seriously, there's no reason for us to be considering a roundabout if the other two property owners are not at all interested. So I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time on engineering a roundabout if we didn't have that answer. So, I understand it may not be negotiated before we make a decision, but if there's a hard no, then why are we wasting our time?
Yeah, I mean, I see, on almost every metric, a roundabout makes the most sense, but if it doesn't make the most sense for our existing businesses and our industry that we have in this town that we're working to cultivate, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Any other input? Going once? Okay.
And I might just add a final note that, as mentioned, new configurations can be challenging and, but these are, being built around the world in industrial areas and other areas, residential areas. And as we've seen in Waterbury and Burlington and other areas in Vermont, after construction and after, some introductions and uses of the facility, generally, we've seen that, public perception has grown to be positive around them.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much.
First two, for examples.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your input.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So that does bring us up to the public hearing. So let's convene the public hearing. It's 8:15, and the official notice pursuant to 24 VSA Chapter 59 and Section 4 of the Town of Williston Sewer Allocation Ordinance, the Williston Selectboard is considering the adoption of amendments to the Sewer Allocation Ordinance referred to as Attachment A, an existing ordinance pertaining to the allocation of public sewerage. Upon adoption, this attachment will designate the portion of the uncommitted reserve capacity that will be available for use during the next fiscal year, which starts July 1, 2025. A public hearing on this matter is scheduled for Tuesday, April 15, 2025 at 8 p.m. in the Beckett-McGuire Meeting Room in the Williston Town Hall, located at 7900 Williston Road. Remote options using Zoom are also available. And with that, Mr. Boulanger.
Great. Barring a request from anybody on the board or in the public, I'm going to give an extremely brief overview of how sewer allocation is handled in Williston. Williston purchases its treatment capacity from the tri-town, that's Williston, Essex Junction, and Essex. The three communities roughly each own about a third of the plant's capacity. Every fiscal year, Williston establishes its attachment A to its sewer allocation ordinance. It's essentially the budget for how much wastewater treatment capacity will be made available for sale in the upcoming fiscal year to different types of land uses. The attachment A process consists of looking at the overall ownership of capacity Williston has at the plant, subtracting the amount of capacity that's currently in use, generally reviewed by looking at what's crossing the meter at River Cove Road. We have one way into the plant, so it's easy to meter and know what we're using. Subtracting any committed capacity that's yet to come online, so this is capacity that developers have reserved but haven't pulled permits to put to use yet, and subtracting a 7% reserve from that. So the long story short, the attachment A proposed for this year acknowledges that the town has over 300,000 gallons per day of capacity that it can make available for sale sort of all time. The recommendation, I'm going to skip right to the attachment A recommendation, is to allocate 65,850 gallons per day to be available for sale to various types of users, and a 79,100 gallon per day reserve, which is 7% of the total owned capacity in the town. Attachment A further breaks that down by use. So the proposal is 10,000 gallons per day to be available to new commercial and industrial users, 30,200 gallons per day to be available to new residential, 1,500 for residential additions and minor subdivisions, 11,650 gallons per day for affordable housing. We did plug in 1,000 gallons per day for planned public facilities in case there is any expansion of those in the upcoming fiscal year. 1,500 for pollution abatement. This would be if somebody with a failed septic or other system needed to connect to the town. And 10,000 gallons per day in the encouraging specific development category. All of the other categories I mentioned, once they're established in attachment A, there's a purchase of capacity process handled via the Public Works Director, myself, and the town manager. Encouraging specific development is different. If somebody wishes to purchase capacity from that category, they need to return to the Select Board and ask permission to do so, and that category is set aside to go to developments that would achieve one or more goals of the town's comprehensive plan. So that's the recommended attachment A, based on what we have available and based on some past practice and a little bit of forecasting of future developments we think are likely to come in and need to purchase capacity the upcoming fiscal year. It's the fastest I've ever done that.
So this is a public hearing, so let me ask, is there anybody who wishes to? Sorry, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody who wishes to give input, actually, doesn't look like anybody, so, okay.
Come on, Sharon, you have an
and-
opinion.
Okay, Eric, is there anybody online?
No, only staff online.
All right, okay. Well, we're actually behind schedule, but we're ahead of schedule for this particular thing, so if you maybe want to vamp or do card tricks or something. But, okay, so is there any question or input from the board?
No, we've been through it.
Yep.
But you know all of it anyway.
Okay. So with that being the case, the motion would be in order to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing on amendments to the wastewater allocation ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. The public hearing is closed. So next, the wastewater allocation ordinance amendment, considering adoption. Any discussion, or should we go straight to a motion?
Let's go straight to it.
For the record, we did spend an extended amount of time on this on the last meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lest anyone think we do not care about wastewater. I'll move to adopt amendments in the wastewater allocation ordinance, attachment A, as proposed.
Is there, there is a second.
You got it in, Ellie.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Me.
There is no nay, it is unanimous. The motion carries and the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you.
We
There you
haven't,
go.
we haven't done that any faster either, so.
Yeah?
I'll send Melinda over for trust fund policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just emailed
Yeah,
her
okay.
as well.
Okay.
We'll make up for it next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
So Eric, while we're waiting, could we do manager's report items?
Sure. A couple of things from my written report. Just wanted to thank our Assistant Library Director, Bonnie Lord-Menier, for serving as interim director after Jane's retirement in December. Bonnie served in the role for 3.5 months. She did an excellent job. We welcomed our new director, Kevin Unrath, last Monday, April 7th. Excited to have Kevin on board, and he's hitting the ground running, so
Great.
thanks to Bonnie.
Great.
Do you want to go to Melinda? I can pick-
Yeah, let's
Okay.
go to the next, let's go to the housing trust fund policy. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
Sure, the floor is yours.
Okay, so you have looked at the draft Housing Trust Fund policy a couple times, asked for some revisions the last time, which I have done, along with maybe one or two other revisions, which I can explain. The main sort of changes that were made were in the housing retention dispersion of, or dispersal of funds. And having talked to the director of COTS, he came to a housing trust fund meeting, a housing committee meeting, to just talk to the housing committee about ways that the town can, help out with some of the things that they do, including housing retention. He mentioned state funding that's used for housing retention, and that sometimes individuals don't qualify because they might be slightly over the required income requirements. And so he suggested that the Housing Trust Fund could be used to leverage those funds, or provide additional funds, or provide funding to somebody who might not qualify for state funds. So that was one use, and he encouraged us to partner with COTS and with CVOEO, who also works in housing retention. And so to that end, on the third page, I made a change to the housing retention program, basically saying that, encouraging people to partner with, or encouraging applicants to partner with service providers to work with them, and with the thinking that we would most likely get referrals from those organizations, saying like, hey, we have an individual, he doesn't quite qualify for state funding. Would you be interested in contributing some funding for, so he can stay in his home or something like that? And that the Housing Committee also, after talking with COTS, thought that grants ought to be limited to the equivalent of 2 months' rent or mortgage, most likely rent, but rather than limiting it to a dollar figure, given that, there's going to be variation in individual or household needs, depending on the size of their household, for example. And that's typically what housing retention funds go to just to pay for back rent, and to have those funds be dispersed directly to the landlord, landlady.
I had written down a question on here, although it's not a requirement for funding, it's like, well, why isn't it a requirement for funding? Why wouldn't we want them to do that first? But I see that instead you put it in the table for points if they have done that. So it's kind of effectively the same thing, but there might be situations where that's a waste of time, and we don't want to waste everybody's time. Probably just a typo, but I noticed that where you changed it to, on page 3 here, program structure, you changed it to 2 months rent, crossed out the dollar amount, but I think in the program description, it still has the dollar amount.
Okay.
Sync those up.
Yep. And if there's any other question.
Yeah, the only other, and this, I don't think this is a change, but, well, this is a question. So there's a work plan that you're gonna bring by April 1st, the Housing Committee shall develop and submit an annual work plan. Is that just the amounts of money by category, or is there something else to the work plan that?
It's really just the amounts of money and the specific programs that recommended for that year.
Okay, that's, we don't look at anybody else's work plan, so I just wanted to make that. So it's mostly the money, okay. The other one's just sort of a comment operationally, and maybe this will, with experience, it won't be an issue, but it kind of, point tables work really good when you're comparing projects, but
Right.
since you're sort of having a rolling application, you might not have anything to compare it to. So, I assume over time, you'd probably say, well, if it's not gonna get 65 points, it's probably not gonna be a yes. So the rolling application process makes it difficult because you're looking at one project. We don't know if there's something better or more impactful out there because they haven't brought it up. So you give them the money, and then when that more impactful one comes along, there's no money left because you gave it to the less impactful one. So but I also agree that you can't be holding, and this isn't the people who need a month's rent to get, to keep their house, that's different. But if it's a project-based one, if someone's got a good project and is ready to go, we don't want to say, well, we only do this twice a year. But I do see a little bit of a conflict on how that will work. So that might be a matter of giving it a shot, seeing if that turns out to be a problem or not. I might be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, but I don't know how you decide if you're gonna fund something when you only got one thing.
Right. I mean, I guess I see the criteria as just really a guideline, and if somebody applies but doesn't really meet many of those, doesn't really meet many of those criteria,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's always hard to say no to a project if there's nothing else to spend it on either, so it's,
Yeah.
but it'll be enough time, I guess, between April 1st and when you start accepting, or accept applications on July 1st, is that what it said? There'll be enough time, so people, it's not just like you have 2 weeks and whoever's ready to go will be first in line. There'll be enough time, I guess, and people will get used to the calendar. If they really want it, they better be ready in July.
I think so.
I think these are guidelines to help the administrator of these funds to give the funds, to grant the funds, correct?
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's the town manager that ultimately makes that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the housing committee would make a recommendation.
Yeah.
This is not specific to the policy, but once the policy is adopted and into effect, how are we going to spread the word within the community? I mean, it's obviously COTS and CBOEO kind of will know, but within community members and in the larger public, how are we going to spread the word that we have this and this exists now?
Yeah, the housing committee's been talking a little bit about that, and we'll be, discussing it more, but they've thought of putting an article in the paper. There'll be a web page and, just through some social media channels. But yeah, I think the paper could be a good outlet.
I don't understand where COTS would be involved in this, really. That's for temporary shelter for people that are homeless, correct?
They also work on housing retention, as well. And
This isn't to house the homeless, this is to keep people in their homes.
Right, correct.
I think it's important that we have that distinction.
But COTS doesn't just provide temporary housing.
shelter.
Yeah,
okay.
they have other programs within their organization.
They're trying to change their names, but.
Because we're not trying to house them.
Right, no, but this would be involved with COTS on the other side of their programming, not the, unhoused populations. Mm-hmm.
Just hope that is clearly understood.
I think we all understand it.
Good job picking up on all the things we talked about last time. This
It's
is
really reflective
pretty
of-
strong, yeah.
Thank
lot
you
of
for
hard
the
work.
changes.
Yep.
I have a couple of thoughts, just my operational accounting side on it. I sent you a couple of bulletins in one of the I am on part 4, J. So I'm right here. And there's the word may. Such terms and conditions may include payment schedule, reporting requirements, invoices, and proof of payment. So I'm stuck on may, because from the accounting side, we're going to require copies of invoices, paid invoices. That isn't a may, that's a must. So just think about that word. And then I'm down on the very bottom of that page, Section C, feasibility program study. And this is just to be clear, with the consumer price index, are we anticipating that will be updated annually? So if there is a payback, are we adjusting that CPI annually? So just question.
Yeah.
And then on these funds that will be repaid, I don't know the answer to this. Will we be able to record a lien against those parcels? Because I don't know how else. If there's a mortgage on them, that's one thing, but will the town have a lien? So if they do get paid off and the town has a grant, the lien is there, and the realtor will see there's a lien there for us to collect our funds. So, just a question for you. I don't know the answer. And then I'm on section 4 as well, the down payment assistance program. I'm on A2B.
Wait, are you in the appendixes now? Appendices?
Let's see, I only printed out the pages.
Program structure I have is number 5.
So I'm under down payment assistant program. A is eligibility considerations.
Yep, you're in the appendix.
Okay, in the appendix. So I'm on this bullet right here. So I'm on the, next to the last bullet on the page under B, and it has loss of ownership of a home due to foreclosure, short sale, deed in lieu of. Do we include tax sale in that list? Is tax sale a foreclosure? I think a foreclosure is a banking thing, but we possibly could have a tax sale as well. And do we want to include that in that list? And those were my comments.
Good question on tax sale. We're going to, with one hand, throw them out of their house and the other hand, rescue them?
Yeah. Yeah. Can
I ask a question?
Sure.
So, I'm really new to this, so I'm curious to know, what is your name? Linda. So, I just watched a program today on Opportunity Knocks. Are you familiar with that? No. Or Balance Pro. They help people. So they don't just help people by giving them money. They actually work with them. So they'll have people come in and say, okay, where do you need help? You have, you're overdrawn with your accounts, or you have problems with your credit cards being, tapped out. So they actually work with people so that they don't get into this problem where they're out of their homes or they have to put a lien on their home. They don't want that. And they meet with them monthly to see where they're going. They've actually helped people too, single mothers, startup companies or whatnot. I just watched a whole program on this. So I'm kind of wondering if we're bailing them out, but what are we going to do to kind of keep them on the a straight and narrow path, So it's not just giving them money and then having to worry about putting a lien. Nobody wants to put a lien on somebody's house and have to deal with that and collect money for taxes. So I'm just kind of wondering where else this could go. So it would help, it would be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
I can give you that information, you can look it up, or I could meet with you, because it was just it's something I came across today. So.
There are local organizations, the Opportunities Credit Union for one, does some of that work locally. SCVOEO has, programmings that help with some of those exact things as well. So I don't know that it would be within the purview of our housing program to do that necessarily, and as I see it, but to again partner with organizations who do those things and help them connect with them as part of the process to get into making sure that they're you know, checking with all those. It sounds like that you added that language for that reason, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, with Opportunity Optics, though, they had somebody going to their home monthly, so it was a very personal, get-to-know-you thing. It wasn't just like going to the bank or feeling shamed.
Yeah.
I actually really liked the way the program was run. It just seemed really interesting. Anyway, so I'll take down your information after. And give you, just in case. I mean, I just happened to see that. I didn't realize I was going to bring that up tonight. But anything to help anybody, you know.
Thank you, yeah.
Do we have enough edits that we're gonna not vote on this tonight?
I feel like,
I think so.
I feel like there's enough things to, yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, I had another one that I skipped because I wasn't gonna. I have to find it though. Hang
Don't
on.
hold back now.
Yeah, don't hold back now. Under Appendix A, Housing Retention Program, down C2, it says requests identified as urgent but not emergency, but we took out emergency, so I think you could just take out but not an emergency. And otherwise, I think yeah, I would, it's only a couple changes, and maybe you could get with Shirley on her concerns and decide if it needs to be updated or not, because I don't quite understand that. I wasn't joking about the tax sale.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and especially because we've just gone through the process of storing a bunch of that up in the past couple of years and facing the reality of what that looks like for our town. Yeah, we definitely don't want to be, yeah, the ones pulling at people's.
and then saving them.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, so.
Yeah.
But I think process-wise, just trying to remember, Melinda, we had talked about operationally, so, you know, it's policy be in place, there'd be, you know, a work plan by the housing committee that kind of sets, you know, the budget benchmark for the year and kind of how the funds would be, you know, available for the upcoming fiscal year. And, you know, if we want to roll this out for FY26, you know, where it's July 1st and August 1st start, I'm wondering to get that piece done as well. Would it make sense for the housing committee to talk about that work plan if they haven't already and kind of bring the final draft
Yeah.
of the policy with the work plan back? And then we could kind of roll that out.
None of these edits would change that
I
discussion.
mean,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so basically, the last paragraph of that memo, they've kind of already talked about, I think it kind of addresses that, that they would like to launch housing retention program and the housing improvement program, and use as much money as they can out of the fund. Shirley recommended keeping $20,000 in the fund at all times. But using, you know, if there's $60,000, using $40,000, or, you know, having that as the target and splitting it evenly between the two programs. But I could reiterate that when I come next.
So I'm thinking about you know, we're gonna have more money going into that fund for the payment in lieu of with our inclusionary zoning, but it's probably hard to forecast that necessarily.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, say we want to keep our floor of $20,000, but, you know, there's $60,000 fund balance right now. If we expend all that, the floor, who knows how much that's going to grow in next year. We haven't invested, I know, but, you know, we might have $40,000 in FY27 to allocate. You know, it's a policy discussion for this board to decide how we want to, you know, allocate those funds for the first year.
But we'd have two things next week. We'd approve the policy and we'd approve the work plan.
Yeah. Then you can kind of, you know, approve the governance structure, then approve the operational structure for the next fiscal year, then we can roll it out and implement it in, you know, July 1st, August 1st. However, you want to give some lead time for, you know, maybe a first wave of applications, so it's not necessarily, so it's out there a little bit.
Yes, especially the first year. People aren't expecting it, but you have to give people time.
We thought about April moving forward, because then it kind of, you know, you started that quarter, third quarter of the fiscal year, then, or the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, so then there's some lead time for the July 1st turnaround and developing that work plan.
Okay.
Will you submit a non-redlined version copy next time?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
because, okay. We've seen, it was helpful to see the redlining, but next time to see a clean edit would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Melinda.
Melinda.
Thank you.
So we'll see you again. So that would bring us to Select Board Goals 2025, 2026.
So, continuing discussion from your last meeting, asked to establish policy priorities for the business year that runs March to March, town meeting to town meeting. Board adopted this for the first time last year. The intent of this document is to prioritize the policy work of the town manager and supporting the select board in the year ahead by providing direction as a public body. This document encompasses several goals and objectives. Many are in different stages of development. At the last meeting, the board held an initial discussion. I've updated the draft document with the feedback from that meeting. I've included a new column for each of these items with some tasks over the next year I think are good to pursue for each one, kind of where things are and where we could
That's
check
really
some
helpful.
boxes, I hope.
Yep.
Then I also mentioned, as you're working through the town plan right now, I'm trying to think what's the continuum there as well with prioritizing the town plan. So I could see, as the select board sets the priorities for policy each year, you have a new town plan adopted later this year. We go through this exercise next year after town meeting. I'd look for the direction from the select board on that new town plan, what priorities to focus on for both, the town manager's office, and if you have policy advisory boards and committees, you want them to focus on their policy work for that upcoming fiscal year. They reset and reorganize July 1st of each year. So that creates that opportunity to identify those in this plan as well with some town plan goals. So my thought, the select board should really drive that prioritization. You'll have a number of things you're working through in the town plan right now. And, what does this board want the town to tackle, in priority there as well. So I think we can develop and use this tool to help implement those items as well. There'll be some other things that aren't in the town plan that might be some operational items, other things that come up. This can be amended during the year. I think we amended it once or twice last year. My goal is to try to update with status of all these quarterly, with a quarterly report for the board to check in. And a lot of these are big items that'll be on your agenda throughout the year anyway. So looking for the board's feedback. Is there any additional changes you'd like to see? Consider adoption. If this looks good, we can come back and keep discussing it. There's no urgency, but we should probably get it in place, within the next month, if not at this meeting.
I've been talking to a few people, and one thing about the town plan, I can't remember now at the top of my head, but there's not much in there about handicapped accessibility. Stores like Home Depot and Shaw's and Hannaford's, if you're handicapped, to leave the store, you have to walk out into traffic, which is which is not a very, as the population gets older, it gets more and more difficult to dodge traffic. Try coming out of Shaw's, and I think, Hannaford's is a good example right now. We're making the front of the store, the way we're designing the grid is that traffic is going by the front of the store. They're not just going into the store shopping, they're using it as a throughway. And people coming out of the store having a hard time, getting through there, out to their cars after they go shopping. I looked at the garden center over here off Marshall Avenue. The way that was designed, it was, I like it a lot better. People are walking out of the store onto a sidewalk. They're able to get into their car without crossing into a throughway. As we do more and more of this grid work at Taft Corners, I think it's becoming more and more of a safety hazard.
Yes, that's a good question. So we'll be back before the board with the town plan discussion at your your next meeting. I think a lot of that lives in our zoning bylaw. So, this would be a good question for the planning department. I just don't know off the top of my head, but.
Yeah, I just don't know when to bring things up a lot of times, I always have a lot of thoughts in my head, but. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that may not be a town plan specific item, that may be more of an ADA, compliance or a, zoning bylaws or, not zoning, possibly zoning, to look at outside of the specific plan. I mean, I think it's possible to incorporate potentially some language about accessibility, in the town plan, but obviously, the concerns like for specific businesses and their parking lots, I mean, that's, you know, not within our control.
Yeah, but I think I was hearing like a focus on it, because we have lots of things in that town plan that we're gonna focus on.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And to have something, Ellie's the expert on this, she can help us, but, you know, something in there that mention the fact that there should be design considerations beyond ADA compliance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a perfectly reasonable request to bring up when we talk about the town plan. You should write it down so I don't have to do it for you, Mike. Yeah, I can't think off the top of my head which section that would kind of fit in, because I think Mike's talking about something beyond just compliance, but thoughtful street layouts and things like that, so.
Thank you again. Yeah, there's a lot, you know, there's things sometimes that's frustrating sitting on this side of the table and knowing when to bring things up and when not to bring things up. There's a lot of times I could go on, but I don't know where and when. But I've just heard that from people, you know, especially, you know, people that are handicapped. If you're in a wheelchair or something, you're on crutches, trying to cross a grid street is very difficult.
Yeah.
30 miles, you know, cars.
They need rotaries with raised crosswalk.
Well, it's just.
Roundabout, they need roundabouts, not rotaries.
I think we need some cement barriers.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Traffic control.
Yeah.
You know, I don't agree with a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think this is great, Eric, and I really appreciate the 25, 26 tasks. It helps kind of bring into my head, this is something I'll look at the end of the year and we'll say, oh, we talked about it once, good enough, or something beyond, but it is, keeps going, it's multiple pages, so it's a lot of work, but, I think this will be very helpful in, I have to look at it a little more closely. I have to admit I ran out of steam somewhere in the middle of the housing policy, but, you know, which one of these are just, we'll get a check-in, you know, in the manager's report versus there's something that we have to be involved in, so that's, I'm not asking you to change anything, this is fine, it's just that's sort of where my head went immediately, it's.
Sure. So would you want to postpone voting on this tonight?
No.
Any comments, changes, recommendations from the board? Okay. Hearing none, then there would be a proposed motion.
I move to adopt the select board policy priorities for the 25-26 business year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The motion carries. And that would bring us back to the manager's report.
Let's see. There's a couple other things I'll mention from my written report. Legislative update, we're continuing to monitor the big bill, the state budget, and component to the local option tax. It was in Senate appropriations, I believe, or no, finance, Senate finance, what they call on that side. So it's this formula for the revenue share for local option tax. It was, it's currently 70-30 with the municipality retaining the 70%, state retaining the 30%. The House version had it at 75-25, recommendation of the Joint Fiscal Office report. There's discussion to see in the Senate if it could move back to an 80-20 split. My kind of rough estimate on that is if it's 75-25, it's could yield Williston additional, say, $300,000 a year in revenue, rough numbers. If it goes to the 80-20 side, it could be over $500,000 in revenue. So it's real money in revenue. It can have a significant impact here on our local needs. So we're watching this one closely. We had some also staffs monitoring the 3-acre stormwater permit rule. We had our stormwater coordinator testify recently and our assistant DPW director. I've been chatting with them a bit about it, kind of wrap my head around it more. But there's draft in the bill with a 3-acre stormwater rule. It would, for Williston to take over, or any municipality to take over permits and perform ongoing maintenance on stormwater systems for these sites. For those property owners to receive the state funding, it would require the municipality to then take them over. So if that was the case, and this was a revenue source for these property owners, and, you know, in order for them to get that, the town has to take them over to unlock that. It creates a capacity issue with our staffing to take over the maintenance of these sites. So we're monitoring that along with some other things in the bill. We'll keep an eye on that and keep the board updated. Looking at as we do the enterprise fund budgets coming up, we're talking with our staff, thinking about stormwater program. Good time for a comprehensive update on their progress with meeting our phosphorus requirements. It's kind of everything stormwater. Our coordinator, Lisa's doing a great job. We thought we could include maybe a site visit for the board this summer, looking at one of our stormwater projects, and similar to what we did with the wastewater plant last year. So we'll keep working on that.
Let's wait till the
Site
peepers.
visits.
Let's wait till the peepers are gone, though.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Does the town have any, for the Bill H 481, does the town have any 3-acre permits that we'd be in danger of taking over?
There are, yeah. I don't know the exact number, but there are that situation. And there could be, statewide where you could run into these permits where the homes affected that have some shared common land, they might not have a governance structure with an association as well. So that adds some additional complexity. And that's where with this bill, there's been some pushback on that with, residents that need to comply with the 3-acre permit, but it's going to cost money to upgrade these stormwater systems. Then the question of who's going to take over the continued operation and maintenance of these systems. And that falls into difference than what the town's looked at previously with our phosphorus load program as well.
There'd be a minimum for a 3-acre pond. You'd have to have a minimum 15 homes, 25 homes. I mean, that'd be easier if they would pass legislation to force them into an HOA.
Yeah, I think it would be good, as this continues to be discussed, some future agenda item for the select boards, be briefed on this and where this regulation's going, and our staff can provide that update. It's a little more depth than I can just right now.
So I guess it didn't really, there was, for a while there, they were talking about changing the 3-acre rule so that they would perhaps focus more on high priority, as opposed to every 3-acre site in the whole state is treated the same, that they'd be more high priority or beneficial programs, but I haven't heard much about that recently, so.
No, me either. So that's another one we're keeping an eye on in the legislature. And I wanted to mention, I shared with the board in an email today, and learned a little bit since then. We're starting to do our capital purchasing for next year. Police department's recommended an EV for our detective vehicle. It wouldn't be a full command vehicle with lights and sirens and everything, but we got rid of our old unmarked car a couple of years ago, the Charger, and we need something with filling the detective role. After they saw it at a recent show last week in Massachusetts, there's an EV model. The policy question I have for the board was the cost would be about $10,000 to $13,000 more than a gasoline vehicle. I consulted with Melinda this afternoon, and it looks like we could get about $10,000 in rebates. So essentially, it could be kind of a wash cost-wise. But when I was looking at that variance, I wanted to run that by the board initially. I think now it might be a few $1,000s worth of rebates. The other piece of that is we need a dedicated charging station for that vehicle. The good news is for our parking lot project, the bids were open this week, and it's came in, it looks like, pretty well under the engineer's initial estimate. We had a wide range of bids, but the low bid, I think, was around the $380,000 mark. We haven't officially awarded it yet, but that's what it's looking like. So we need to see how the project plays out ultimately, if there's any things that come up during it. But if there continues to be, we don't need all the funding allocated, that would then in turn go back to the community projects funds to reallocate. I've recommended the Public Works, given that, let's just go ahead and install the charging station for the police department. Just want to make sure the board was okay with that approach and looking for the EV with knowing that information.
Yeah, you make up $3,000 or $4,000 on brakes and everything else that you don't have to do on an EV, so.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get that purchase order in, and then Just a reminder, Green Up Day is coming up with the town fair on Saturday, May 3rd. If anyone wants to be involved in that on the green, there'll be people there. So let us know.
Not required this year, huh?
Not required. I think we have a budget. That's all I have for manager's report.
Okay. Is there any other business?
Yes, 2 items. The first is with Ellie's election to the select board, we have an opening on the planning commission. We currently have an alternate on the commission, Mickey Myatt. He's interested in serving in the full capacity on the commission. It's new to have an alternate on the planning commission. So this hasn't come up before, so I would run this by the board. So you could consider appointing the alternate. You could ask the alternate to interview for the position, touch base and have more of a formal interview process. Or you could advertise it and then, consider the alternate and any other applicants. We don't have this in the rules of transaction. I don't have any policy to go by, so that's why I bring it to the board to see how you'd like to proceed.
As somebody who's willing to be an alternate, I'm usually all for it, but it just feels a little too close to not even let people in the town know that there's an opportunity to serve on that board. If we made it clear, the alternate is the next person in if they want the job, if that was clear for us, then I'd feel comfortable doing it, but I don't want people to say like, oh, it's like we're just picked one of their buddies. I don't know, it just feels, since we've never done it before, it doesn't feel good to not at least open it up for, to see if anybody else is interested.
My only counter argument is we will be opening it up for the alternate position that Mickey will then vacate, right? And we did interview Mickey for the alternate position, so he has been before the board before. And so, I feel like, we felt confident that he could serve in that position and has been, and now the interim serving in the alternate as a board member. And so I personally, I think, although there isn't the precedent for it or the specific policy, I think that the nature of the role of alternate in itself kind of dictates that he would be next in line for a position. We could, reconsider or, at the reappointment time or something, could fill out the end of the term, whatever it might be, if there was a way to, think of it.
I guess if we'll advertise the alternate position again, I wasn't sure if that was a actual bona fide position, or it's just like we had really good candidates and we decided one could be an alternate. So if this is actually gonna be, an alternate is actually a position and it be advertised for, then I could be bought with that argument.
Yeah, I think the alternate position was asked for specifically just because we thought it would be really helpful to have another body there, knowing that it was not always easy to get quorum and just good to have an extra person in the room. So I don't think it was added just specifically because there were multiple applicants. And I will say, in my experience with serving with him for quite some time, he is a very thoughtful member of the team at just about every meeting, just always has great input. So I fully endorse his candidacy.
So conceptually, I agree with Greta. I think if you're the alternate and somebody leaves, maybe it should be on a case-by-case basis, but as a general proposition, I think the person should be bumped up to being on the board, and we advertise for the alternate position to be filled.
Yep, I'm okay with that.
I'll second Ellie's recommendation.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then there actually is a proposed motion.
I'll move to appoint Mickey Myatt to the Planning Commission as a regular member for the unexpired 4-year term through June 30th, 2027.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There are no nays. Mr. Myatt is appointed.
Final item I have for you this evening, I handed it out. It's, I think this is our last liquor tobacco license renewal from Sarah Mason. The town clerk provided this updated table today. These are approved now on a rolling basis, but many of these still have the April 30th to May 1st year, because they've been licensed for many, many years here. We don't have, staff doesn't have any concerns about any of these. Our two new ones are on this table that you approved this evening. My recommendation would be to approve this list as transmitted for these renewals.
Any questions for Eric? If not,
This is sort of a procedural thing, not that I have a problem with any of these, but it's, this is not really warned as a list, right? So we should probably, but we're not gonna do this anymore, or is this just a? What if somebody in the public really cared that, you know, Chef's Corner shouldn't get their, you know, first-class liquor license, they wouldn't have an opportunity because it's not on the agenda, or it's not warned that way, specifically?
When everything was on the April 30th renewal, we used to have a list that was posted with all the renewal table. We've tried to work through how to structure it. You know, we certainly could do that moving forward. If there was an issue with the specific business with the licensing, if there was, say, an alcohol violation for sale to minors, I would be alerted of that to alert the board to that, reconsidering an application. But
I understand that.
if there's a public, you know, comment about it, no, certainly that's,
think about that.
we could change
forward,
that structure in the future.
Could you just enlighten me as to the difference between first and third, and second?
Oh, yes, this always comes up.
I
So
guess
first-
every time someone new comes on
counter-
board, I think, oh, we should have like a thing
Counterintuitive.
where we talk about that, yeah.
First class is beer and wine. Third class is spirits, mixed drinks. I think second class is like a convenience store that sells prepackaged alcohol.
Oh, okay.
so is there a motion?
I will move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 No nays? The ayes have it.
And I'll just add, Ellie, the OCP is outdoor consumption permit, and there's a separate process for that to make sure there's allocation and approval for seating before someone can apply for that.
Thanks.
So that would bring us up to final thoughts on items from this meeting. Are there any final thoughts on items from this meeting? Hearing none, I will declare that we are adjourned, 9:05.
We were doing really good time-wise. We made up